So good morning, everyone. As Linda said, I am representing Library Systems and Services, and we are a company that operates libraries in 84 different locations in the United States. And we're very happy to come here and join you today because we would love to help you find a solution to keeping the libraries of Douglas County open. So what we've done, put together a proposal, a briefing here that just will hopefully bring up some discussion and ideas. And we've done this with other towns where the funding was in question. And through our partnerships and discussions, we've been able to save libraries, is the term that we use. So what we're going to discuss today is introduce all of you to our company and what we have done and answer any questions that you might have. Discuss our solution to continue library services in Douglas County. Consider municipal commitment and cost sharing, because at this time we do not know what the funding will be. And so it's very hard to even put a proposal together for you without knowing from what we're working with. And then, of course, listen, learn, and find out what the next steps are for this group. So, starting on slide number 3, we are library people. I'm a librarian, as Linda said. My boss is a librarian. We have hundreds of librarians working for us, and we love libraries. We absolutely love them, and the reason I came to this company, I was a municipal librarian, but I have an MBA as well as an MLS. And the thing that I loved about Library Systems and Services is that they run their libraries so efficiently and so nimbly. And I felt that if I wanted to write a grant, or if I saw a community need that I wanted to address, in a municipal environment, I had to wait. And I almost had to wait years because there had to be budget cycles and things. But when Library Systems and Services runs a contract, it's a contract. So that library team knows for 5 years what their budget will be and what they can go and do. And so it's just a different approach. And it's for people, librarians, who really want to change the way that the library services in their area is being provided, and not that there's anything wrong with the way it's always been, but there are just some people who are very passionate about science or very passionate about technology, and they can see that there is a particular work skill needed in an area, and so they want to go and pursue that. So, we are just a different way of running libraries, and we train our staff to be on the cutting edge and be risk takers. Okay, turning the page to slide number 4, those are the different locations. I understand they're very small. We operate libraries in California, in Oregon, in Tennessee, in Texas, and in Florida. And they're all listed there, and our website has them, and I will send this briefing to all of you so that you have all of that. We partner with local government. Your community owns the library assets. You own the collection. You set the policy. Our staff, who are your library directors and librarians, will be sharing their recommendations with you, but ultimately it's the community that decides. And then you retain the fines and fees that come back in for anything that might be checked out late or lost. It comes right back go right back into the collection budget. And what we provide is expertise, because it's the staff that we put into the buildings. So our solution and our proposal that we'd like to bring to you today is a lot of off-site centralization of services that we can do, not necessarily here in Douglas County. because we already have an HR associate, we already have an HR organization that takes care of all of our company all over the country. We already have accounting, and we already have a group of librarians who are selecting items for all of our libraries. And so if you have library money of collection budgets that you're going to set for the different libraries that remain open, then this team is already paying attention to what are the hot bestsellers, what are the new materials, what are the new DVDs, what magazines should we have, and they would be able to do that remotely. They wouldn't necessarily have to be staffed here, but they would be working on behalf of Douglas County and making sure that you have new and fresh items in your libraries. They also use analytic tools to make sure that the items that they buy are to make sure that they're the stuff that gets checked out. Because if you don't check, we call it collection management, if you don't manage your collection and have a way to check to see what people are interested in, then you don't know what to buy. So we run all of our processes with analytics and with data so that we can make sure that every dollar that is spent is used effectively. The library ops consultant basically would be the project manager. That would be the person like myself who would come and work with the partnerships that we could form. So if the cities decide that they would like to put some other entity in their city library building, say the school and the health department would like to use the facility, then I would sit down with them and we would put together an MOU, and we would basically say, okay, the city will pay this much, and the health department will pay this much, and you will provide these services, and you will provide these, and the library services will be such. And we've done this in the past, and this consultant, after everything is set up and running, then the consultant can go away. It's just a one-time, just to get everything off the ground, because we have the expertise to do this.
So Laura, IT's here, they're going to just push that over, and they'll try and work on it. So
oh, great.
Let them do that well.
Great.
You guys are fine.
Important for the only 2 part-time positions that we as a company believe that you should have here in Douglas County is a library trainer and a volunteer coordinator. And those 2 positions are important because you've got to be able to train people how to do things, how to use the system that we use that has all of the collection in it, and also that we have all the patrons in to do the library cards and to check out items. So you've got to, there's a certain amount of skill. Yes, sir.
And these are, what you're saying is the 2 LS&S
employees.
would be.
Yes, these would be the 2, the very minimal.
Other people.
Yeah, no, these would be the 2 LS&S employees that would be needed, as far as we're concerned, on the ground here, because you have to have someone with library expertise.
You're on it.
And what that brings is buying power, economies of scale. I was sharing earlier that right now, currently, our book budget, combined with all the contracts, is $6 million. So when we go to Brodart, who is a book retailer, publisher, we can do a lot with that kind of buying power and get very low pricing for the budgets that the communities are able to use for their book budgets. So we can get a lot more. Here is the chart of all the different places that we are currently. And this is what we were currently talking about. So ongoing trainer and volunteer coordinator, 2 20-hour positions. Having a volunteer coordinator is very important because usually volunteer teams in libraries, there's quite a bit of turnover because any kind of volunteer activity, people come and go as their schedules allow. So having a trainer is important because you have a lot of people. You can't just rely on people staying and retaining all the expertise. And then the other thing that we wanted you all to consider is that there would have to be a materials budget for each branch. Because, for each branch that's going to stay open. Because if you don't have new items, if there aren't new books coming in all the time, then it's not a viable collection. It's not, it doesn't entice people to come in. I mean, really, truly, we are in the business of being bookstore-like, and so we have to have an attraction, and the collection is the attraction. So if we don't have a materials budget and we just leave everything on the shelf, well then they're less likely to come. So it's what we believe is necessary to have a vibrant library. Okay, so going into how we would do these things, and to give you a little more depth of what we were talking about, for the first bullet of the off-site centralization of collection and technology, what we call it is central collection management. And what this would be, like I said, off-site staff librarians who would select and order popular items coming out every month, have them sent to the branches. All of this is done electronically through the book buying company. You get them all processed with the spine labels and the barcodes, and have them shelf ready. They just come in, and volunteers then could open the books and just put them right on the shelf. And the catalog records are all done off-site as well. So your catalog that has all your items is being maintained and kept up to date with things that we DSS, which is basically the weeding process, because as stuff does not get used, then it gets removed so that we can make room for the new items. All of that will be happening with the adding and the deleting of the catalog by these librarians. Possible courier contract with ESD to deliver books and materials. Since you already have this wonderful ESD setup, this is an idea that we had for moving the books around. Right now down in Southern California, I have a courier that goes between Riverside County and Ventura County and LA County, and they drive our books around every day, 6 days a week. And so for that, it costs about $132 a day. That's what I'm paying and that's quite a big route. So we could outsource that. We could have a courier do that and pay a contract with a courier. But if EST is already doing it for their own needs, then we can work with them and partner with them, possibly. Each branch should have a set materials budget based on the city contribution for support, et cetera. So we believe that that is critical. If there won't be a materials budget, then we're not sure how the libraries will attract new patrons or even current patrons. Hosted ILS and catalog. We can also do this remotely. We have an IT system. We use Polaris. I understand that here in Douglas County, you currently use Cersei Dynex. But we could either leave Cersei Dynex as your ILS provider, depending on where the contract is for that, or we could move you over to Polaris. It would just be a very similar system. It's just a different vendor. And then we can remotely manage that as well. Patron and staff computer support, that depends on what this group decides they want library services to look like. Right now in libraries, we have the collection, which is 80% of our business in most libraries, and then the technology, which are the computers that people come in and use, which is 30 to 50% of the business. So I'm not sure, I haven't been able to tell from reading the articles in the paper where this group is at with the decision to keep the computers going. Because it wouldn't be difficult to remotely maintain them. They do that all around the country. So we could continue to do that. We also have people in Jackson County who are IT technicians who we could also dispatch and come up if there was anything that had any hardware needed to be moved out. So we could certainly handle that if you wanted to continue to offer your patron computer service. But we also have staff computers because you would have volunteers and you would still have the ILS where the library cards would be going. And so we would still have to support some computers in all the libraries. These are the two staff members that we are talking about, the volunteer coordinator part-time to recruit, schedule, and plan the work. And then the library trainer who would be going around making sure that all the library volunteers understand how to do their job and everything is being done according to your policies and procedures. The library services consultant, like I said, that's somebody like me. I would work directly with whatever government partnerships that you would like to put together and create the MOU for every city branch so that it is all determined.
You're in Washington, what's a MOU?
An MOU is a memorandum of understanding.
Okay.
So it's just a document between Friends of the Library and the board or a government entity. Yeah, we use them quite extensively. Municipal fund commitment ideas. So these are some ideas that we came up with that we've seen either elsewhere or that might be a solution for the county to fund the central support functions, which would be the IT and the ILS. The ILS is your basically your catalog of your collection as well as your patron database. The cities would then contribute based on their population to fund the staff, the two staff members, and the branch collection budget, because that is really more the city asset, is the collection in their building. And then the school district to move into the branches, and because I know that that's on the table, and fund the building maintenance, utilities, and internet costs, because the Wi-Fi is another very important benefit that people come to libraries to use.
Excuse me, but you got branches, of course, this is plural. Are you talking just about this building here?
No, sir. I am referring to all of the city libraries.
Well, like for instance, you know, you got Riddle, you got Winston, you got Merle Creek.
That's
You're
right.
saying that EST would be moving in and doing that to all other facilities?
I don't know.
Because that's what it says there.
Right, and I didn't, because I wasn't here when the ESD did the proposal to use, I think that they were talking about Roseburg, but I didn't know if they were interested in any of the other buildings in the county. So
They may be interested in one other building, but that's it. So it's
Exactly.
Roseburg and maybe another one
Gotcha.
geographically located towards the south. But that's a proposal at this point.
Absolutely, and that could be anybody else too. It could be in another city if there was some kind of a group that is looking for a facility, then they could move into the branch and pay some of these costs that anybody using a building would pay. And, you know, so that was, these are just ideas. These are just ideas to possibly give you guys ideas from our perspective of the way that we've seen other communities deal with this kind of a situation. This is just hypothetical by population to for city councils to consider if they're going to pay for, if they want to pay for the staff and possibly the collection in the city library, then do it based on population. And that's just an idea. And then this is another idea that is used extensively, I know in Idaho and some other rural states, where when you have a city now funding a library, where, you know, right now it's the county, but if we move into the situation where you have the city putting money from the city council from the general fund into the library, then the unincorporated communities around that city, if those citizens want to use it, then they pay membership fee. And they can either do a family card or just an individual membership. And then the other thing I've seen done, and this was the example from Idaho, was that the dairymen would pay because the families living on their dairies were out in the county and they couldn't live in the city. The dairymen would pay the fee for the families to have library cards. So that's another way to handle it. So people have been very creative.
Excuse me, Laura.
When they,
Name?
Linda Middlecock, would you please just say what the fee was that they paid per employee?
Yes, it was $35.
Thank you.
Yes.
So explain what the question was, Lee.
Oh, sure. For the phone listeners, Linda's question was, what was the fee for the non-resident card for the families who lived out in the county and did not contribute to the city tax revenue base? And that was $35 a family.
Hey, this is Sean Mock. Is that a standard fee across the board, or would that just depend on the cost of library services for the particular area? I mean, would that be similar here, do you think, or would that just depend on what we have going on in our situation? That fee number.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it would basically, we could very easily come up with that number because we could figure out what it's gonna cost to operate the library and divide that by the number of citizens in the area. Yeah, so they worked up that number. It's not the same everywhere. Some places it's $25 a person. Yes.
Amy Jensen, is that $35, is that a one-time fee or a yearly fee?
I believe it was an annual fee. Yes, it was an annual membership.
Linda Middlecoff, just to reiterate, the dairy farmers agreed to pay that as a benefit to their employees who lived near the dairy but went to use the library.
In the city.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And it was so simple. We were so pleased. We went to a meeting with all the dairymen who lived in there were 3 different counties that I was in a consortium with. We went to a meeting and we basically just presented to them that, they're housing quite a few people who can't afford to use the library because of this county fee. And with one vote, yes, they all agreed to pay the fee as part of the employee benefit package for their dairy employees, which was great. And so when you have large employers living out or working out in the county, then that can be done.
Dave Cunningham, Winston. If this is a county-driven program, then if you had the library card, would that be good to use at any of the branch libraries, also including the Roseburg Library?
That is what we are recommending. That's our recommendation, that you have a county system. We hate to see it get broken up. And so even though the cities will now be possibly the ones who are funding the libraries themselves, we recommend that you stay on the same ILS system and you share materials because the whole county benefits. And that would also mean that since I'm sitting in Roseburg and I can go on the catalog and I can ask for an item from one of the other libraries you brought to me, then I should be able to also walk into one of those libraries and just pick it up. Because if you're still sharing, you're still sharing. That would be our recommendation.
The reason I'm asking is because the county is retaining the ownership of books and materials.
And that's because they bought them. As soon as the city starts to buy books, then we might put a different colored label. And I've seen that happen. That happens. When something like this happens, the ownership, it was paid for by the county. But as we go forward, if the city starts paying these books, then we can start talking about different ways of, and each book would have its city library's name in it. Now, if we went into this new model where the cities were the ones who were paying for the items, we would stamp the books with the city name. It wouldn't be Douglas County anymore. So all of that can change. And that's why I'm saying with the library consultant, we can make all of that work for however you want to do it.
Amy Jensen, I have another question. And Harold, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. Hasn't it been the Friends of the Libraries that have purchased all the books for the library system since 2008?
No, that would be contributions from throughout the county. The Friends of the Library have played a part in that, as has the Library Foundation, has had many individual members and business owners.
So I guess my question is, how would you label those books?
Well, that's a great question. I believe that when the Friends give the money to the city, because it would be now, the Friends of the cities would probably stand up and start working with their city branches, that once they've given the money to the library branch manager, then it becomes part of that city collection. So that's how I would recommend it. I mean, I know that there are some books in some libraries that do have the extra Friends stamp donated by the Friends, just so the Friends get the recognition.
Brian, so under that model, we've got some city-owned materials and some county-owned materials. How are the city-owned materials available for transfer to be checked out at other sites?
Yes, in our model, in our recommended model, we believe that it would be best for Douglas County to continue to share. All of the communities would benefit the most from the shared collection. Because then, if we select for you, we don't have to buy all the same bestsellers in every single city. Because you can have a couple in one branch, a couple in another branch, a couple in another branch, and they can rotate.
What would be the advantage then of the city's trying to retain title? Wouldn't that just add to confusion of ownership?
No, we do it right now. We do it, Riverside County doesn't have, they have 36 libraries that they run. And they have, their book budget is, I know it's growing, they're getting more, but I know that we've been operating off of $1 million book budget. And so they can't buy 7 copies in all 36 libraries of every bestseller. So they might put 1 in each, and then you have all the people in Riverside County just share it, and just get pulled and share it in.
If a book was lost, went to Riddle from Glendale, was lost, then who bears the cost of that?
The patron. So, and those fines and fees come back into play. Because as soon as you collect all that revenue, then we can put that back into the collection. So if that was a title, say that was something that's a bestseller and everybody wants it, Harry Potter, for instance, then we have to buy that again. And it might go back into the Riddle collection or, wherever it's being used the most. So yeah, we deal with those types of things all day.
I just have a lot of questions.
Sure.
And I'm Winston. If the county owns a section of the books and the city owns a section of the books, and you mentioned earlier that about the retaining the fines and fees, how in the heck do you manage to separate all that out? If the book is for the city, they should collect the fine and the fee. If it belongs to the county, they should do this fine and this fees also. Is that not a little bit of a bookkeeping dilemma?
The way that it's been handled, for instance, Reading, Shasta County, which is just right down in California, when the county let the city take over library services, okay, which is just like the model I'm talking about. When that happened, all the books that were in the building then turned over ownership to the city because they were serving the same purpose. The items themselves have already been purchased. So it's just a matter of now who is minding the store. And so in that case, I mean, then you don't have to worry about it. Then the city is responsible for collecting the fines and fees and the fiduciary responsibility of protecting those items.
You see, that's the fly in the pie because the county wants to retain the ownership of the books.
Well, I think we're in negotiation here, and all of this can be discussed, because that's really, truly, what is the intent? The intent of the collection is to be, it depends on what ends up happening too, because if you end up with only Roseburg having a collection, well, then the county might decide, how to handle that, or Roseburg City might take over. But it's never been an issue that we've ever had to really worry about. Because also the other thing that happens is that the collection will age, and so the county books eventually will be just replaced by the city funding collection.
So let me just add to that, Gary Lee. So Dave, the county wants to retain ownership so that we can put something together countywide, whether it be a group, organization, nonprofit, cities, or whatever. But I believe the county would be willing to turn those over to whatever organization group that we find that tries to keep that model together. But we don't want to keep that. I don't believe long term. I don't, anyways. I'm one commissioner. But we want to keep it together so it just doesn't end up, going away, and who knows who has it.
Pat Fahey, just a comment. It's really easy, and I've been to a lot of different libraries here lately. It's really easy. We're real provincial about our own libraries. This is our library, these are our books. But the smaller libraries are the ones that benefit the most from the system. Because by having a system in place, you can access the community-wide books. If we get real provincial and say, these are our books, they need to stay in our building, that's the absolute wrong way to go. That's why we're all in here together talking about keeping a system in place.
Exactly, and that's why we're recommending that be the way this continues. Because that's the best benefit.
Hi, Bill, and I have a couple of questions. First of all, I'd just like to make a comment. County-wide might be a better way to say it rather than county, so that we're not confusing the county with the county government. The two questions are, one, you didn't mention digital books. How do you handle that?
Well, if in the model that we're suggesting, if the website stays functioning and the catalog stays functioning, then when we're buying books with the book budget that each city has, part of that selection will be ebooks. If patrons in those cities and the countywide use ebooks, if we have a need for that, it's just another book type. And so we just buy those like we buy large print, and like we buy paperback, and like we buy hardback. It's just another type of book.
Well, right now we have a service with Library to Go, and of course that's a collection of ebooks that we all. So when you say buy ebooks, how would you deliver them? Where would the patron go to download them, for instance?
We could just continue the service. We could continue the service you have with Library to Go.
Okay.
Is that Oregon-wide?
Statewide consortium that you pay into to be a part of.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so that would be, and something we haven't talked about, which would also be part of this equation, would be once the cities have decided that they're going to keep their libraries open and fund to a certain amount, then we would sit down and probably create a consortial agreement for something like this, for the libraries to go. Because then we have to say, as a consortium, then we're going to continue with this type of thing, rather than every city having to do it.
My second question then is kind of technical, but one that has come up in our library system in the last couple of years, and Harold can comment about that. Having people that are volunteers taking money for fines or for donations even becomes tricky. How do you handle that?
Well, and when you say tricky, is it because they need the training for the handling of the funds? Is that what is the tricky part?
Well, it depends on it depends on whether a nonprofit or an elected district takes over. But there is the problem of keeping track of actual cash, which is kind of a delicate thing, and whether it's and so if you have a volunteer that comes in for 2 hours a week, then how are you going to certify them to take money?
Okay, gotcha, yes. Okay, let me just explain. The reason that we are suggesting a trainer is because the daily operation of that library will not be different than the daily operation that you would have with staff. We would train, and because we still have to do the daily money draw, we would still be doing all of the same money functions that we would currently do with staff. And we wouldn't have a choice in that. Usually, either the county sets those procedures or the cities set those procedures, and they hold us accountable. And so if we, as LS&S, are contracting for you and promising you to run your libraries properly, then we find out how that works, and we train anybody who's going to touch the money so that all of that happens just as it should.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do have that going on in some locations.
So that's not a legal problem that you or
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. No, we don't have to handle that. And that's the importance of the trainer. You know, it might seem like it's an extra, but it's not, because there's so many important procedures that you can't just leave to somebody knowing how to do it.
Nancy Erickson, Library Board. I have several questions. You mentioned the membership fee. Does that affect the public library status?
Gosh, you're pulling me back into my 2007 library. I don't know.
I think I could answer that, if I may. If you're in the district that's created, or if the district's countywide, then you can't charge a fee. If the district's a consortium of cities and there's people outside that consortium, then you can charge a library card fee.
So they would still be considered a public library and
Yes.
those people?
Yes.
Okay.
But somebody outside the public library district, and this happens in Eugene, and they charge, I think, $130 a year. We, here at the county library, if I'm not mistaken, if somebody from the out of district.
Sure, I understand. I understand that, like but it's outside the county so far.
Yes.
So, and I'm being a little selfish because I am not in an incorporated city, so I would be paying a fee.
Me too.
And I don't have a problem with that because I'm willing to support. But I was just curious, if with all these different, broken up, do you know how many are not in the incorporated area? Is that?
I think it's more than half of the county
More than half of the
population.
county?
Yes.
When I looked it up on, you know, like, the computer and the internet, it came up to half the county population.
Okay.
Linda Middlecoff, I believe the figure that Michael Lasher quoted last week was 56%.
50%.
56%. Yes.
Are outside of the city incorporated.
Yes.
I have two other questions. I keep hearing the resources of the books, but the library offers more than that. It offers children's reading programs. It offers team projects. Where does that fit in?
Well, we're working with we're working from, in fact, I don't even know what the budget is right now. So what we were bringing to the table today was just basic library services, which would be access to the buildings. You know, in LS&S, our rule for when we set up a library, 7 days a week it's open. So we would find enough volunteers so that we would hope to open all of the branches 7 days a week. That would be the goal. Because in our core values, we believe that it goes access, collection, and literacy. So access to the building is the biggest community need. Because if you know, this is where all the magic happens. This is where the database is. Well, you can get those online. But if you don't have a computer at home, then this is where you need to come and do research. So access to the buildings and then the collection, that's why we're mentioning the budget. Now, only a 20-hour trainer and a volunteer coordinator, I'm not going to promise that they're going to have the time necessarily to teach somebody to do a story time. We would certainly want to, and we could probably get there, but what I'm offering, what I'm talking about today is really, truly doors open with a good collection to bring people in.
Thank you.
Because
And just a little further then, because there are grants to apply for, so that would be a totally another project that the library systems would want to be looking at. 'Cause
Absolutely.
I couldn't see volunteers necessarily doing that. I don't know.
Absolutely, and in fact, we at headquarters right now are hiring grant writer. We're hiring, we have so many grants that we're administrating in all of our locations that we are hiring a full-time grant writer to be assisting all of our libraries. So the nice thing about working with us is that we've got all of these things, HR, accounting, grant writing, already built in. And so you're just contracting with a company that can already provide a lot of support.
So Brian, did you have a question? Someone on the phone had a question?
Yeah, I did. Brian Kravitz, City of Roseburg, Roseburg City Councilor, I should say. It's hard on the phone, so if I ask a question you've already explained, I do apologize. But and the best practices, who is the agreement with, let's say for the city of Roseburg, or, well, who is the agreement with between LS&S and whom?
Great question. Oh, my goodness. I will use, sir, the example in Reading. And because the city of Reading partners with the county, Shasta County, they have the MOU between the two, Reading and Shasta County, but we have the contract with the city of Reading. And I don't know why they chose to do it that way. I don't think it has to be that way, but that's just an example I can give you of something that I know very well.
Okay, and then you had talked about the role the Friends of the Library would play in each city. Would it be possible for the Friends of the Library to carry that agreement, or does it need to be a municipality?
Oh, no, it does not have to be a municipality. In Jackson County, it's a library district, which is made up of community members. So I don't believe that, and I would have to definitely defer to people above me in the company, but I do not believe that it only can be a municipal entity.
Okay. And maybe you touched on this, but I mean, one of the biggest questions, and I've had this emailed to me a few times from people, if we can't afford a library in Douglas County, how do we afford an LS&S?
How do you can't afford libraries? Well, this is where the quandary lies, is what do the cities want to do? Because I understand that the county has fallen into this situation, but all of the cities have these buildings in their cities. And because in other counties in the country that have run into this situation, the cities have found a way to keep the library running, we are coming with the thought or solution that if that is a possibility at all, then this is how we could help.
So then the cities would just have to come up with whatever means to pay for the contract, is that right?
Yes, sir. And that's why we're making this as minimal as possible with mainly off-site services and very minimal on the ground staff.
And how soon would we have an idea of what the cost would be?
Well, that would be the next step. That's my very next slide, I believe, yes. And the next step would be a full proposal with pricing, but we kind of have to know what we're working from in order to do that.
So Brian, this is Gary Lee. To answer your question, I want LS&S to come and kind of give an overview, and then my thought would be I would sit down with her, Michael from ESD would sit down with her. She's got a whole bunch of questions today that she'll kind of go back, and then she'll bring back a proposal of what she sees, and probably meet with a few of the cities as well to kind of get some ideas to bring it forward.
With all due respect to the ESD, why are they at the table? If we're talking, if all of these things are still very much up in the air, why do I keep hearing about the ESD as though they are already part of what we're doing?
They're not, but they might be a partner involved in this, just like maybe UCC might be a partner, or some other entity might be a partner. So as I explained kind of from day one, we're just still in our infancy stages, and we're looking at all our options. And maybe one option is to not have ESD or anybody else, and LS&S be that only entity. But in order for us to move forward, we want to look at all the options.
And I don't disagree. I feel like we probably are going to end up in a situation where we're combining some of these entities we're hearing from. I just feel like ESD is being pushed to the front of the line when we haven't heard from UCC and Sutherland and all these other people. And I want to be careful that we don't give some sort of unspoken priority to one of the presenters. But, and so take that on advisement, I guess. I guess there's no comment needed there. The last thing was, you mentioned a bookstore model. Would it be possible for local commercial operations inside the library, like a coffee bar, or use bookstore?
So the question to me is, in the city library, we would have the free collection for people to walk in, subsidized or paid for by a bookstore maybe in the library as well that people could purchase from, kind of like a Friends book sale type of situation, and then that fund would help buy new books for the free use? Is that what you're suggesting? Yeah, absolutely.
A revenue model for the city.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I can, in Camarillo, California, the bookstore is right adjacent to the big library, and the librarians get $50,000 from the Camarillo bookstore to add to their collection every year. So absolutely, the Friends of the Library, I would assume and hope that they would definitely be part of the solution here, because their book sales do generate revenue that could then, be used for the collection.
Excellent. I just wanted to add one more thing for the group. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be able to stay on the call, but I wanted everybody to know that I've met with the Douglas County Friends of the Library. I'm basically rallying people to that organization within the community. So for those people who know of people in Douglas, well, around Roseburg, who don't necessarily have their own library branch, let's say like in Bly or in Green or something, but I'm rallying people to join up with the Douglas County Friends of the Library. They're in desperate need of new, energetic people, and I know we have a lot of passionate people who are very, very concerned and extremely qualified, I might add, to play a significant role. So anyway, just so that the general public knows and this group knows, if you have somebody who wants to know what they can do, please send them to Douglas County Friends of the Library, Suzanne Hall. There's a website with a form and everything for people to sign up for. So we officially now have a place to send people who have been concerned since the election about what they can do to help.
And Brian, they could just get a hold of you as well, and you could forward that information, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So Dee Dee, did you have a question?
Yes, Dee Dee Murphy, Reedsport. I'm a little concerned with the ESD as well as how much they might be involved, since we're excluded from this particular ESD and are included in the Coos County one. So if we went, with this proposal, just as an example, and ESD was partnered, how would that affect us?
So I can answer that. Gary Leaf. So I had a conversation with the superintendent over at Reedsport, and my question was exactly yours. What if ESD were part of this? And his comment back to us is, well, we should look at, being Reedsport, maybe changing to the ESD so that could help the library and then also help their school district over there. So that's on the table right now.
Okay.
Quick question. It says full proposal for pricing. Are you saying, like, for instance, Winston again, is that you would give us a proposal of the cost of operation for our branch library?
We can give you a proposal. Basically, you would present an RFP, because we can't present a proposal without knowing what you're working from. So that would be what would be necessary in order for us to know how to propose, how to operate for you.
Okay.
Because if it would just be Roseburg, then that's going to be a very different proposal from the whole county system.
So Gary Leaf, can I add something to that, Dave? So what I expect that LS&S is going to do is they're going to come in and say, this is what the cost might be, all right? So that doesn't mean that necessarily the city of Winston has to come up with that cost. They're saying that the Winston cost is XYZ dollars. And then this group might try and figure out how do we fund that, including asking for the cities to pay for a portion of that. Now, Reedsport, for example, has already wanted to put a library district so they can actually get their own money, and they would have the ability to pay for that out of that library district funds. Or maybe the foundation might want to, the library foundation might want to kick in. I'm not saying they would or wouldn't, Or maybe there are other community grants that might help us to do that. So that at this point, their objective is to say, okay, we have, one main library, 10 branches. This is what we foresee the costs would be of each of those. That's the funding that we need to secure. Now let's go back and figure out. Now remember I talked about our first meeting, Oregon Solutions. Oregon Solutions at the very end of this will come in, and if we say we like this model or we like this model or we want to do something different, and we ask Oregon Solutions, help us figure out how to get there now. And that's what our hope is. They'll go out and try and get everybody to buy into that, figure out a way how to pay for that. So at this point, it's just coming up with those options, and we will figure out how to do whatever we decide is the best from that point. Linda?
Well, I wanted to ask Laura.
Linda Middlecoff.
I'm sorry, Linda Middlecoff. I wanted to ask Laura to maybe illustrate with some examples, some real examples, especially when it came to when you said access, because our access has gone down, down, down over the years for necessary reasons. And could you clarify that for us? I don't want everybody thinking we're going to have like a 24/7, requirement here.
No, basically, every manager, every director of a library has to come up with priorities. And our company core value is, and we've all decided that if we are going to be responsible for the operation of libraries, our director's priority is access. So 7 days a week is what we promise. When we go in and we give you a proposal, we will say your library will be open 7 days a week. Now, I don't know how many hours, the number of hours per day will be based on the volunteers, and so, because in this situation, it's not our staff, we don't have as much control over that. When we are putting a proposal in front of you and we are, going to be fully staffed, then we can certainly build the schedule and tell you exactly 8 to 5, 8 to 8, 9 to 9, every day, because we're going to staff it that way. So that has always worked in our proposals. In this case, it'll be a little different because we're going to be having to staff probably with volunteers. And so if that's the case, then we're going to say it's still going to be our priority to keep those buildings open and, as much as possible, and hopefully to 7 days a week. But it's also going to have to do with how many volunteers we bring in, and that's going to, that changes the dynamic a little bit. But, so anyway, Linda, does that answer your question?
Partly.
Okay.
I think also, just you and I talked about last night, I had found out about the Livermore situation in California, where one of their branches was cut off by a freeway, and the city wanted to close that library, and the people there were very upset about it, and so they had to really come up with a creative solution. Do you want to talk about that? I mean, just describe, or should I just say?
I would prefer that you do, because I'm not real familiar with
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's not one of your
No, that's not one of
okay.
ours.
Well, I was intrigued by it because we have such small communities, outside of Roseburg, and they have a 24/7 access. And what they did was they looked at different industries, the supermarkets, for example. They looked at for self-serve technology, and then also the security businesses, and they looked at high security. So I think that everybody that has a card has a background check, because you can't just let anybody in there if it's not staffed. And so they have 24/7 access based on these library patrons receiving the cards, which allow them, like a card lock, to get into the building anytime they want to. 1 day a week, a certified librarian is there, and the rest of the time there are panic buttons and cameras throughout the library to maintain it. Now, how they came up with the money for that, I don't know, but I'm just telling you that the options in what LS&S can help any library system achieve are just endless. And it could be something that we suggest that they haven't even thought of yet, so.
And that suggestion actually is something that's on the table for Bernie right now, down in Shasta County. Because they wanted to move into a bigger space, and it was right on Main Street. And right now, the county and the the library board trying to figure out if they can move. But the plan is that it will be a 24/7 operation. And so yes, absolutely, in the smaller communities, that would be a way for you more access. Because all the technology is there. I don't know if any of you have been to the ATM machines in some cities, when before you can get in the door, you have to swipe your ATM card. So it would be the same thing with the library card. You would have to be a card holder in order to go in.
Pat Fahey, I want to make sure I got a handle on just the presentation as presented. So LS&I would provide 2 employees. One is because most of performance is done offsite, watching the Polaris system. So provide 2 employees, basically a trainer, and then basically an executive director, I'd call it. And then all the branches would be responsible for staffing themselves based on a volunteer model.
Let me reframe a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so-
that's good, I appreciate it.
Sure, the executive director would only be a temporary situation. You
Right.
wouldn't need that ongoing, because of the way that we structure our management, we have regional directors,
Right.
which means that I would just gain the
Right.
territory, and I would come up and make sure that the volunteer coordinator and the trainer is the other position.
Right.
That is, and so 2 20-hour people is what we're suggesting would be boots on the ground here. Now, when it comes to the cities being responsible, no, we are responsible. That's why we have a volunteer coordinator. We would be telling you that as part of the contract, we will recruit and we will market the library. And I mean, we would basically be responsible for the operation of all the branches. So that would be.
So you go out to a city like Linden, a relatively small city in the south part of the county, and say, our model is a 7-day-week model. We need 3 people to make this thing work, 3 volunteers. But you can't get 3 volunteers from Linden. So what happens then?
Well, this is new territory, because like I said, we normally run that model with staff. What I'm hoping and what my company is hoping is that once we keep libraries open, that, as you move down the line and as revenues and finances and things change, all of this might change, because that's happened. Riverside County, when they went in, it was a dire situation, but now they're doing very well, and so the library is doing very well. So, sometimes you just have to start somewhere, and then, it will be a partnership. We'll be working together.
Okay, Gary Leaf, I invited Michael Lasher. Have you met Michael at all?
No, not
Okay.
yet.
So Michael is with ESD, and I wanted him to come here so he could listen to what you had to say. Michael, do you have any comments? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful proposal. My plan is to talk to Laura either after today and maybe work with her to develop some sort of joint proposal for your consideration. I think that, I certainly respect Brian Prowitz's opinion that the committee needs to look at all available options, not just the ESD as an anchor tenant, so to speak. But I think there would be a way for us to work together with them. I'm very excited to meet Laura and hear about this, because we don't at the ESD know anything currently about running a library, and they know everything about running a library. But I think the other benefit I see of a partnership between us is that we could do a lot of the sort of the other things. Or work with cities to do other things around early literacy, children's libraries, or children's story times. We could have the technology and the internet access continuing to operate. We could, depending on which city wanted to go where, I think there's an opportunity for, if the Yoncalla Library or the city of Yoncalla wants to fund, an improvement in libraries that would include story time and early childhood education and other types of things, we could make that happen. But the operation of the library could be done by professionals that really know how to do it. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to partner in a proposal to this group that would show, the difference. Either of us alone perhaps isn't as much of a positive solution as us together.
Good. And thanks for coming, Mike.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to have you.
So I have other questions. Go ahead, Brian.
Brian, so I want to present some impressions that I've gotten. I did Google LSI and got some impressions from that, and they're not my opinions. I'm just presenting them for your clarification. One of them is that, as a private for-profit business, one of the primary ways that LSSI keeps costs down is by low wages and no pensions. I mean, it's not being a public agency, so it doesn't have to deal with governmental pensions, which takes a big load off the budget. Does that seem accurate to you?
Well, I will agree with you that when we hire staff that is already working in the library, which is not necessarily the model that we're talking about here, but in other cases, we do hire staff that's working there, and because they become our employees as a private company, then their government pension will stop as of that day. They will still be entitled to those benefits, but they will start our 401k program. So we have a full benefit package that you need in order to hire the best and the brightest, because we do recruit the best. And so we have to have good benefits in order for them to want to work for us. So it's a challenge that we have because we are competing with those pension obligations and the pension plans, even trying to recruit the best people because they're that's what they have currently, and we understand that. But yes, but I, having a pension, and weighing the difference, I wouldn't have come to this company if there wouldn't have been a good number of reasons to make that switch.
Now, looking at the satisfaction surveys, I didn't get any, there wasn't a whole lot on patron satisfaction. I didn't get any impression that there's a great hue and cry against the company from the patrons in general, except maybe it was Menlo Park, I think, and they had a well-established library that was running well, but the city decided they were worried about the future, so they contracted with you. And some of the old-timers just announced about privatization of their library. But on the employee satisfaction things, it kind of came down to a 2.5 out of 5-point scale. But the range was from 1 to 5, interestingly, so it was 2.5. But a lot of it came down to comments that I saw that, and I know how it works with, you're going to have sour people regardless. It's going to happen. Not everybody's going to be happy no matter what you do in management. But some of the comments were, well, they watch us like a hawk. They don't trust us. And particularly volunteers seem to say that they weren't trusted. And with respect to that, I have a neighbor who had a friend in Shasta, and she said, oh, LSS got rid of all the volunteers. That doesn't seem like a likely thing to me, but that's what she said. So anyway, I just want your response on that.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to know where you're finding any kind of staff survey info, because, we can provide you with that as well, because we do our own staff survey every year. But, the internet is as good as the internet, so I'm not sure where that data is coming from. And I can definitely tell you in Shasta, we've got plenty of volunteers, lots and loads of, and I have a great article that was just in the paper. This just came out on my news feed, talking about how happy the community of Reading is that we just celebrated a 10-year anniversary running their library. And so I was going to pass this around so you guys can just, have just one local example of a place that is thriving under the operation of our company. And I know that Linda can speak to, she's spoken to some people in Reading, and she can talk about what the foundation thinks of us and the friends. And
You know, I was thinking about Jackson County too, because,
Linda Middlecoff.
Linda, sorry. Because they were like the first people with whom I spoke. And I was just so knocked out of my socks over it in terms of the enthusiasm that every person I spoke with at that library had. And I actually talked with their Danny Jordan, who was the, let's see, what do they call him? He's called the CAO, but he functions, I think, like Lance Colley does, like a city manager in Medford. And he was there before, during, and after, and until they went to a tax district, because Jackson County, once they took on LS&S, which is the proper title, so if you're looking at LSI, that's probably not the right information. But anyway,
entity
right.
called LSSI, it's a Louisiana something.
Yes, so that's a different entity, right. So this is Library Systems and Services, LS&S. Anyway, so Jackson County tried to pass a levy twice, a levy, not a tax district, after they opened their new library and then realized they didn't have the money to continue. When the second one, and they both failed by about 64% in Jackson County. After that happened, the commissioners put it out for an RFP. They got 2 bids, one from the library, which was $8 million for the next year to run the library, and one from LS&S, which was, I think it was about 3.5.
3.5.
Right, okay, so and they offered very similar services, but so then they, within 6 months of signing the contract with LS&S, by the way, I forgot to say that after the second levy failed, the libraries all closed in Jackson County. They were closed until they got the contract with LS&S, which was about 6 months later. Within 30 days, LS&S reopened all of the libraries, fully staffed with all of the former employees except for those who had either retired or gone on to other positions. They rehired 73. I think there were originally about 80 employees. And from what I understand from Danny Jordan, that the only people who seem to be upset are just a very minor few, and I'm not going to say who. But the volunteers are just gung-ho about it. The employees are gung-ho. They think it's a very exciting system to work for because they're extremely innovative and they're, like Laura said, cutting edge. Everything that's new, they're on top of, and they're helping the libraries to become trained to offer the same. So it's really exciting to me. It's like, you know, I used to work in public health nursing, but for a private community health organization, and the difference was night and day. That's all I'm going to say about it. And not to say that we're so burdened with taxes and everything else. So this organization offers the freedom of, you know, thinking outside the box.
Okay, we've got Gary's got a presentation to make. I've got time for a couple more questions, and I do want to open it up for a brief to the public. If we can. So,
Mine is Pat Bay. I'm like Linda. I do a little research. So if you look at the May 16th Medford Tribune, it talks, the headlines is library contractor takes heat. Now I'm just going to read you the first 2 paragraphs. A contract to operate Jackson County's 15 libraries came under fire Thursday over charges that the private equity firms control has created excessive employment oversight that could stunt workers' already low wages. I'm not only embarrassed that we pay $10 an hour, I'm also ashamed, said Kathy Shaw, a library district budget committee member. Now, I only bring that up to the point because there's always an opportunity for employee problems with the employer, but I think that you brought it up, Linda, so I thought I'd share that.
what year is that?
This is June, last year, May of 2016. My only comment on it personally is I was involved with that campaign to get that district passed. And
Could you speak up a little, because you're facing that way?
Oh, I'm sorry, pardon me. My only comment, and I bring that up, is because I was involved with getting that district passed. I testified to 2 or 3 of the counties and cities we were working in. That's not what I was anticipating. I work in different libraries, different places, but I just want to let you know that there is 2 sides of that coin, and this is one side. And then Linda probably is reflecting the other side, and they both bear looking at.
Yes, I agree, but I think it would be interesting to hear from Laura about the pay structure, because I really don't know. I didn't ask about that.
Can I suggest that we're getting into whether we award this to LS&S?
I agree. And
That's really not.
the whole idea was to give her back feedback so she could go back and I would hope that that's addressed in their whatever proposal they come up with. So are there questions from the public right now? Joe?
I just have one question.
State your name.
Joe Ross, I want to thank a lot of the members for asking a lot of the questions. I emailed them yesterday, but the one question I have remaining is the contract term, the length of it, a negotiable item? In Jackson County, my experience from what I've read is it's a 5-year contract, and I understand you've got to have some stability and planning and setting up things as well. So tell us about the length of contracts and your different experiences.
Well, what I can tell you, Joe, is that you're the customer. So you tell us. We recommend 5 years so that the staff can, put plans in place. We usually do a strategic plan that goes about 5 years, and so they know what their budget will be, and so off they go. However, if you want, and in a situation where it's just year by year that things are changing, a 1-year agreement would be fine.
Okay. And you mentioned strategic planning. Is that something LS&S also does as part of your services?
We do. We absolutely do. And we believe in a strategic plan because it involves the community's voice. We go out and we ask the community, how would you like to use the library? What are your goals in the community that you're facing? What are your challenges? And then we come back and we think of the things that we have at our disposal that we can use to address some of those challenges. We try to work with the community that way.
What experiences have you got with setting up endowments and foundations or assisting them, ones that are already in place?
We have a fantastic foundation down in Reading, the Shasta County Foundation. I personally have had a foundation at my library district in Colorado that I work very closely with. I've never set one up, but I know how they do it.
So you can support fundraising efforts and actually assist them, in that regard?
Sure.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, definitely I can advise because that's the other thing. We have so many friends groups and they all like to help each other. So this is great.
Go ahead, state your name.
Rick Troxel from Sutherland. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's great that this group is looking at all possibilities and doing everything right. Bob Bell at the foundation, didn't at one time the foundation looked at the cost of having a private service do to apples what the county currently had prior to the bond, and found that the costs were similar or more to have a private service do the same equivalent provide the same equivalent services?
You have to understand that this was in 2000, I think 10, 5, could have been 5. And our budget at that time was, up there. We were an acceptable library at that time. That was before the cuts started. At that time, we had the county contributing all the transport, supporting this library, etc. And so when LS&S looked at it, yeah, I'm going to get it, looked at it, I'm sure that it probably was a wash for them, that we were running it most efficiently and with the funds that we were receiving, and which at the time was over close to $3 million. And so with the county support on top of that, it probably wasn't a profitable venture for them. So they said, we can't run it cheaper than you're running it now.
So
things have changed a heck of a lot.
My only point here is that I think it's going to work out that if the county's paying $2 million now, it's probably still going to be $2 million or more that has to somehow come up with money. If it was apples and apples, 11 libraries and the whole situation, understanding ESD may be in the picture and all that, but apples to apples, what we found in the past is that by hiring a service, it wasn't much more efficient than the county itself doing it. So at the end of the day, the same amount of money we'll have to come up with, in whatever deal we try to put together.
Once they put a proposal together, we'll find out.
Yeah.
I don't see that that's probably true today, my opinion, but we'll wait and see.
Is it Rick from Southern?
Yes.
Hi, Rick. Hi. Linda Middlecoff. Just to reiterate, just that remember the example of the bid that the Jackson County Library first put forth in 2006, or I think it could have been 7, but, and then versus what LS&S put together. That was not apples to apples, it was apples to oranges. And also, from what I remember, Bob Windrow told me that apparently it was Max Lee who was the director at that time. I don't think it ever came to the point where there was any really official proposal from what I remember. Yes, because I asked him about that months ago. That's what I'm remembering.
And I agree with Gary. We'll see what happens.
So, Carissa or David, do either of you have questions at all? No? Okay. Okay, a couple more.
I just want to confirm that you're talking about 2 employees, the trainer and the volunteer manager for the entire system? Okay,
We're
thanks.
trying to work with very little funds.
Sure.
So, and remember that ESD, part of their proposal was to add help in IT, and they even talked about possibility of a librarian, you know, and stuff, so. Right.
Bob Pritchard, Glendale. I don't have a specific comment about public or private, but I can say this. When we moved here from Chicago, we had a choice of going just about any place. And we had a list of things that we had to have on a piece of property. And a good library was right up there at the top, right there with clear title and good water. That important. So whatever you do, I'm all behind you, but do it right. That's all.
And that's why we're here.
I know that, and I just want to encourage you. This is hugely important.
Good comment. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay. Lori, I want to thank you very much for coming down. And how long are you in town then for? Are you zipping out, right?
No, I am not leaving until Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
So I'm available for anybody.
Well, enjoy the other one.